Nicoletta Hedger is a licensed marriage and family therapist and award-nominated sexologist practicing in Los Angeles, California. She specializes in sex therapy for diverse populations as well as equine-assisted psychotherapy. When not seeing clients, Nicoletta creates weekly content via her award-nominated show Sluts and Scholars, a sex-positive, shame-free educational podcast for professionals who prioritize pleasure. Y'all, we got Nicoletta. Fabulous. I'm looking forward to this question, and I know that there's a lot of folks that probably have questions. A lot of folks struggle with what we're talking about today, so I'm excited for this talk. But before we get into the talk, they've heard the bio, they do all the things, but my guests know, and if not, you're going to learn. I like to know directly, who are you?
Thank you for asking. I'm trying to come up with a better response to it because I'm really tired of answering who are you with what I do. Because in our
Ooh, yeah.
culture, we're just like taught that. So I feel like my prepared answer is what I do, but I just want to say that it's a work in progress because I think who I am is more than that. Who I am is like someone who's struggling with her own health stuff and someone who's trying to figure it out and a partner and a daughter and a friend and someone who's a little burnt out. What I do is also a part of who I am, but I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I specialize in sex therapy. And I also host a podcast, which you have been on and will return to, called Sluts and Scholars.
Yes.
And my goal is to help people experience more shame-free pleasure in their life and find ways to better connect with themselves. And I also work with animals as an equine assisted psychotherapist, meaning we work with horses to assist people in their therapy journey and hopefully to assist the horses in that as well. So that's who I am.
I love that. I think that is so true. We instantly go to how do we make money? How do we
Right.
survive versus like, this is who I am. Vulnerability is scary for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's just,
Mm.
and in capitalism, right? It's all about like, well, what are you doing? What are you producing? What are you doing?
Status.
Yeah.
Are you worth talking to?
Exactly. Are you
Especially
worth
in
That's
LA.
literally the question. Are you worth talking to? Absolutely. And I've been guilty of it too when I ask people that.
Sure.
So I'm trying to shift that and I've been starting to ask people, how do you like to spend your time? But I
Mm,
don't know if I'm still
yes.
working on it.
It is a question. And also when you answer honestly, people ask like, how are you? I'm like, today's kind of rough. They're like, I don't know what to do
Yeah.
with this. You're supposed to say,
I'm
I'm
fine. How about
okay.
you? Yeah.
I'm like, nah, it's kind of rough. And they're go,
Right.
I'm sorry. I don't
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard.
That's funny. It is really hard. How did we meet?
Oh my gosh. I want to say we met when you used to do the Survivor like cabaret.
Oh, yes.
Back in the
That
day,
was a time.
I
That was
think
a time.
yeah, I think we met that way, so it was a really fun thing, but just through a lot of different, colleagues and peers and friends, and the overlaps have continued as we've known each other, but dang, I mean, it's been, like, 10 years.
We're
I
old.
feel old, let me
I'm
tell
so
you. My
thankful.
knee hurts, my
My
back
body
hurts, my
does.
body hurts, I feel I am in it.
What does trauma mean to you?
For me, the way I describe it to clients and to myself is really anything that overwhelms the nervous system that affects our ability to move through states the way that ideally our body needs to. So, to be able to move in and out of different states, including survival states, but also relational, grounded states, all those things. So, really, I define it broadly as anything that overwhelms the nervous system that affects our quality of life. So
Mm,
obviously, there's a lot of people who want to create a hierarchy of like big trauma, little trauma, one instance versus ongoing relational attachment trauma. But I see it affecting people a lot in the same ways. So yeah, anything that overwhelms the system and affects your quality of life and connection.
yeah, yeah. I love asking people that because I think there's so many different definitions depending on who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that people assume, well, if it doesn't look like this, then it's not trauma. And it's like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and you know,
uh,
I mean, I see this with my clients all the time where they'll list out all these things that like I mean, look, it's not necessarily up to me to be like, "Yes, that's trauma and it's affecting you as PTSD," but I often will give education to help people get there and understand it, but people will list out these things that I'm like, "That's trauma," and they're telling me how it's affecting their body, and I'm like, "That's trauma response." And I educate them,
yeah,
and then they'll still go back to like, well, no, you know, but this didn't happen to me and this didn't happen to me and I wasn't in war and like nobody raped me. And I'm like,
yeah,
but still, here you are in therapy having these feelings and these experiences and these struggles. And so, um, yeah, it's such a wide experience for people who either are threatened, have perceived threat, and are living in that
yeah.
state more than they need to be.
Which most of us fucking are, especially now. But I
Yeah.
digress. Um, do that all day. So, getting to this work that you do, and part of the purpose that I want to have this conversation with my friends, I want to have these talks with my friends because I get to learn more about them as well,
Thanks for
very
being my friend.
selfishly. You're welcome. Um, but I think there's also the parts that people like don't know about the people I'm talking to. Like, you didn't just wake up a sex therapist. Who was younger Nicoletta? Because she was a time. But like, how did you get here? How did you like? What was teenage you like? Let's just start there. What did teenage you look like? Young, wild, and free. Yeah?
Oh my gosh. You know, I'm lucky to have some views back into that because this is a whole nother story. But I actually did like a reality show when I was younger that never got aired. So
What?
we'll have to watch it.
See, I'm
I have
learning.
some video evidence and old MySpaces and things like that to look back, and
I can't
I
wait.
look
I'm
back
coming
and
over
I'm
with a
just like, oh
martini.
my gosh, what is going on with her? Um, but I would say, you know, I didn't want to be a poser, right? I was like really into trying to be like
No.
alternative and not like the other posers, which probably made me a poser. So I really liked, you know, I was into alternative music. I liked shopping at Hot Topic. But then I also had
Yeah.
this other side that really wanted to fit in. So I had my juicy tracksuit and, you know, my Von Dutch hat or whatever. People who are of my era will understand what I mean. But, you know, it was this kind of push pull between like, wanting to be liked, wanting to fit in, but also like wanting to be cool and alternative and had this kind of fuck you attitude, which I think is
You
something
still
that
do.
helped. Yeah, is something that helped me get into sex therapy because I've always been interested in the taboo, the things that we're not supposed to maybe like or talk about. And
Sure.
so I definitely had some luck growing up and having some supportive parents and people around me who encouraged my like sexual and relational knowledge and education to an extent more than other
Sure.
folks. Um, and so yeah, starting in high school, I became interested in talking about sexuality and I had my siblings had a babysitter at the time who taught me that she would never hook up with anyone unless they went and got tested together. And this was like such a novel idea for my, you know, 16-year-old self. And then I started doing that in late high school and through college. And it became a way for me to start having safer sex conversations before I even really knew what that was. And it became like emotional safety as well. Like, is this person willing to
Mm,
chat with me about my needs and my comforts and our health
sure.
status? Um, then by the time I got to college, I worked at the Sexual Health Resource Center and um, had a column in the newspaper called "Sex Talks with the Tree." I was the mascot of my college, which was a tree. Um,
Wait, pause. What do you mean it's a tree?
so I
Live, but so we had a tree.
Yeah.
What now?
I went to Stanford. Their technical mascot is a color, which is really stupid. The Stanford Cardinal, which is a like a reddish color. But the unofficial university mascot is a tree. And so at all the games, all the football games, basketball games, volleyball games, t-shirts, it's the tree. Um, and so that was me my senior year, and I used my tree, my arboreal platform to teach people about
Wow.
sex ed weekly in the newspaper.
I love
Yeah,
this.
but the other thing that helped me is I had my own therapist. growing up that
Mm,
my mother kind of forced me to go to at 12, but I'm so glad she did. And
yeah.
that really led me on the path, I would say.
That's wild to like one, the tree, y'all. Let's sit with the tree for a moment because what um I think we have similarities in the sense that our families let us be ourselves and
Mhm.
now we get to be these fun weirdos that people pay
Totally.
us to be. I love that for
Totally.
us. Um did you always know you wanted to do sex therapy or was it just therapy?
I think it probably started as just therapy, but I do think later in high school, the sexuality stuff was always an interest. So when I started in college, I was always looking for classes around that topic and working at the Sex Health Resource Center. So I think I knew pretty early on that that was like the path, both personally and professionally interested me. And so I just kind of became the person that people would often talk to about that stuff or have conversations with that they wouldn't normally have. And I think that mixed with that sort of attraction to the taboo kept me interested because the more I went through the process, the more I realized people didn't want to talk about it and people struggled to talk about it and explore their bodies, their pleasure, communicate about these things. So the more I saw that there was pushback, the more I wanted to do
Yeah, still on brand for you, still on brand. Okay, we'll get there.
it.
Have you so I don't know if you've listened to me talk, but you know me in life, so you know there's gonna be a lot of side combos happening. Have you ever taken the erotic blueprint test?
I have. I use it a lot. Shout out to Miss Jaya. And I use it a lot with clients. I have found it to be so helpful to help partners better understand each other and kind of
Sure.
diminish this assumption around like high libido, low libido. So I love it. What do you
What I
think mine
think.
is?
I think it's like kinky, a kinky sexual.
So I'm like a kinky sensual, I would say.
Okay, okay. It was there because I was like, this bitch also likes cute little soft woo things, but the
Totally.
other
I
side of
love
it.
rocks. Yeah.
I took it again today
You
and
did?
I'm still kinky. I said, yeah.
Is that a surprise?
I was like, nope. I was like, still me.
Yeah.
Look at there.
Absolutely, and I think the blueprint can often show up with who we are in our life, so I'm the kinky blueprint, which again is around that, sort of what's taboo, what's shameful, um, what's kind of novel in that way, and I'm I feel sensual as well because I can get anxious, I can get in my head, and I do like kind of the artistry of an experience and the slowness, and my nervous system really likes, um to create an experience, and it does like a sort of a slow approach, for most
Sure,
things.
sure. That was just it for sides, just because I wanted to know. So today we're really gonna talk a bit more about like pelvic pain and
Mhm.
medical trauma.
Yeah.
Um, and I like to ask my guests, what do you want to talk about? I want people to be happy here, consent. Why did you want to talk about this today?
Firstly, it's something that I've been going through myself that has been a big struggle, but it's also kind of become something that I've started to specialize in with clients, and it was sort of, I don't want to say by accident. I mean, I was aware of it. I learned about this, but um, I ended up, working with a lot of people who are sexual medicine specialists and pelvic floor therapists, and I just kept getting referrals for this. And a lot of the people I see with vulvas and vaginas, though it can affect all pelvises and all genitals,
Sure.
that's just who I see a lot of. um, so many people have pain. I think it's like 1 in 4 people with vaginas experience pelvic pain, but the number's probably a lot higher, or pain with sex, because a lot of people think it's normal, so the number's probably higher. So I wanted to
Sure.
talk about it because 'cause I'm seeing so much of it. It's such a, like, systemic issue as well, just in our medical system, and also because 'cause I'm kinda living through it, and I'm feeling passionate about it and helping people learn to advocate for themselves, and just a
Mhm.
topic people still aren't talking about. Most
Yeah.
health providers don't have any training on it. So, as many places as I can talk about it, I'm going to talk about it.
Fabulous. Let's talk about it.
Great.
When folks do come to you, Are they, because you are a sex
Yeah.
therapist, and so do they say, "Hey, I'm having these pains," or does it come through in conversations about them actually having sex
Yeah.
and not even understanding the bigger issues?
It's been a mix. I think now that I have worked with a lot of folks like this, I do get referrals from people who already know they're having pain and they've been referred to me by their pelvic floor therapist, their gynecologist, some specialist. But the other half, I would say, come in and they don't even know they're having pain.
Mm,
And so they come in and they're telling me like I have low libido or like I don't want to have sex with my partner. And I ask a lot of questions, but one of the first questions I ask is, well, have you experienced any pain with sex? And they're like, oh yeah, it really hurts like when they first put it in, but like that's normal, right? And so
sure.
a lot of times, I think because especially people with vaginas in our culture are taught that being a woman or being a person with vagina is just normal to be in pain and have discomfort, and to not really be
Yeah.
heard and believed around that. And so a lot of the folks
Mm,
that come in have just been grinning and bearing a significant amount of pain and discomfort and just thinking it's normal. Or they've talked to their OBGYN about it and they've been like, oh, have you tried lube? And that's kind of it. And then the more it happens, the more traumatic it becomes because their body's tensing in waiting for the pain to happen, which creates more pain, to the point where some of their desire libidos just like shut off. Um,
sure.
and so a lot of people will come in and haven't even been asked the question. And then when we get into it, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm having pain. And it's like a light
Yeah.
bulb, which is wild to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. That is such a thing. Like, we're taught, like, the first time you have sex, it's probably gonna
Yeah,
hurt.
your period's
Like,
supposed
these
to be
things
really
don't, like,
painful and just cripple you for a week.
it just, like, sets you up to be like, "This is gonna suck. Everything about my future
Yeah.
sucks."
And sex
Um,
should only hurt unless you're kinky like me and Jim and you want it to. So,
hello?
it should only hurt if you want it to. And if it's planned and if you're experiencing, pain with it, there might be something going on. And even with your first time, it doesn't have to
Yeah,
hurt your first time, but most of us don't have the knowledge to have it not hurt.
yeah. Let me take it back. So did you start having your own navigation of your body before you started working with these individuals, or did you take your own experience to really want you to work more with these individuals? I mean, not want
Yeah.
to, but they're finding you for a reason.
Yeah, it wasn't something that I knew I was experiencing before. I don't think I was experiencing it. It just kind of ended up
Okay.
being something that I was able to really work with people on. I think because of some of my other interests and specializations just around advocacy work and healthcare and like holistic mind, body, spirit, biopsychosocial wellness. And so my pain and stuff didn't happen until this last year or two. So
Okay.
I was familiar with all the stuff because of the work that I had done, but now I experience it myself.
Hmm. That bodies after 30, my body started being like, "Hey, have you
Mhm.
felt this
Yeah,
before?
right?
Figure it out." You're like, "What?
I
What
know,
is
and it's
this?"
like all happening at once and it's oh, yeah, our medical system is really really tough in navigating some of these chronic conditions.
Yeah. When folks do come to you and when they do come to you and they know what the struggle is as a sex therapist, because you're not touching them. I'm
Correct.
assuming you're not touching. Let's be clear, everyone.
Yes.
There's no touching here in that support, and there are PT folks that do that.
Mhm.
How do you support these individuals as a therapist?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first, we're doing a lot of like resourcing. Like, I want to know what their current tools are, if any. I want to know like how their nervous system is doing. I really want to approach it as much as I can from a trauma informed space to just kind of to get to know their nervous system. What are we working with? Where are things at right now? Then I would say it's a lot of psychoeducation. So, education around the psychology of pain, around painful sex and pelvic pain. And then it's a lot of me working with other practitioners too. Because obviously I can only really help with the psychological piece. I can provide education and some referrals. So usually then my first step, if I hear pain, is I will refer them to a sexual medicine specialist. So this is someone who's usually a urologist or a gynecologist who has specialized sexual medicine training. Because most health practitioners do not have specialized training in this. And
Yep.
the group Tight Lipped, which is a great advocacy group around pelvic pain that y'all should check out. I think they did a study that said on average, people with pelvic pain see about 15 doctors first before they get a diagnosis and get the care that they need, which is
That's so
so
much.
inaccessible for most people, cost
Yeah.
wise and otherwise. So, my first step is to send them to a specialist so we can really know what's physically going on so that I know how I can best support them. Um, so sometimes it's helping with helping them find their voice so that they can advocate for themselves and have tools
Sure.
and resources to take care of their nervous system before, during, and after doctor's appointments, especially if their doctor is not collaborative with them. So it's a lot of that. It's a lot of finding creative new ways to experience pleasure. And it's a lot of re narrating around helping people feel pleasure able now and
Mm.
feeling into the new story that pleasure is something that is, I believe, like a human right, but also a medicine and a tool for healing, as opposed to only something that we get to have when we're all healed up. So, you know, different clients are going to do different things, but I would say these are kind of the main themes of where we start.
It's so interesting that for a long time, I didn't even know there were pelvic therapists, right? Like
Most people
these
don't,
aren't the things that we're taught.
right?
Um, and like I was visiting my friend Hunter in New Mexico, and I was like, listen, TMI. And I started like laughing and like peeing on myself recently. And I was
That's another
like,
fun over 30
excuse
thing
me?
too, huh?
Excuse me? And so my friend is a PT and she was like, "Do you mind?" I said, "Sure don't. Let me get up on this table."
Have
Okay.
a look.
Lubed up with some gloves. Boop boop. She felt around. She said, "Oh, you're doing too many Kegels."
Yes.
Which I think
So
this is the reason
then
I'm
it's
saying is
more
because
tight than it needs to be, but it's also weak.
it's too tight. Too tight
Too
and
tight and too
weak.
weak.
Which is a which I think is a conversation we can have is
Yeah.
we're taught like, well, here's this
Yeah,
thing.
you
Are
wanna
you
have a
doing
tight
enough Kegels?
vagina, do some Kegels.
But there can be too much.
Yes.
And I think that's the conversation that we can also engage in is like, you can overdo it with trying to do everything.
Mhm.
Like when you're trying to fix things, have you met individuals that are like, I've done this and this and this and this and this? And you're like, what?
Yeah. Well, and most of the time what they're doing is sort of a one size fits all thing that has to do with like a cultural norm that they've been told, such as doing Kegels. Some people absolutely do need to work their PT muscles, their muscles in their pelvis, but it's not something that everybody needs or should be doing. And so that's something that you can figure out with a pelvic floor therapist, with a sexual medicine specialist to tell you what your body actually needs. And so, yeah, I see people sometimes doing a lot of things, but they haven't necessarily gone to a doctor or a healthcare provider who's taken the time to actually see them as a whole, unique, integrated individual to help them figure out what is best for them, as opposed to, just this, yeah, this one size fits all thing.
You kind of brought it up, and this is something that I talk about a lot with trauma survivors, and that
Mhm.
is medical trauma.
Yes.
Um, the idea of going to the doctors is so scary for a lot of people,
Yes.
especially those of us that have vulvas and vaginas or identify as women, because we're often not believed.
Mhm.
Um, what can you explain what medical trauma is just so folks can understand
Yeah.
and maybe some of the things that, you have had to work with clients around when even just going to the
Yeah.
doctors?
I mean, again, I want to maybe describe it broadly because I think there's so many things that it
Sure.
can be. So I think first there are folks who are part of, minority or marginalized populations who just have systemic trauma and fear around the medical system, whether that's folks of color who know that their ancestors were non-consensually tested upon, and they don't trust the system, or people who just know that maybe the system was not created for them. Then we're looking at people who are have had negative experiences themselves. So I see a lot of folks again
Mhm.
in marginalized populations, queer folks, other LGBT folks, trans folks who have gone to doctors where they have been misgendered, where they have not been treated well, where they have been asked questions that didn't feel right for them. And the healthcare practitioners just weren't informed about how to work with non-monogamous, queer, whatever population. And so they stopped going because they weren't happy or comfortable with the care they were getting. So
Sure.
that could be trauma. Then I think we have folks who have, if they're experiencing pain. So for pelvic pain in particular, the most common one that I see, in addition to all those intersections I just listed before, is folks who have gone to a OBGYN. And look, OBGYNs are great. They do an amazing service. Not everyone can learn all the specializations in all the things, but it's a real
Sure.
problem in our whole country that there's not better pain education and trauma informed care.
Mm.
And so, what I see happening a lot is folks will go to non trauma or pain informed providers. Those providers will forcibly use a speculum for someone who's already experiencing pain to do a pelvic exam, or they will use some kind of ultrasound, and the person is in excruciating pain. They're not firstly asked. There's not really consent and explanation of what they're doing or expectation of what it's going to hurt. Or they might say, "Oh, you'll feel slight pressure," and the person's in big pain. Um,
Yeah.
and then we have this power dynamic where, especially if you're in trauma response, but for anybody, even myself, I'm in this field, it is fucking hard to speak to a doctor who's in this power position and say, no, that's not right, or that doesn't feel right for me, or I have some questions. And, they're like, maybe don't have the time or don't know how to answer, or just are like, I'm the doctor, I'm right. Um,
Yeah.
and so that can be
Or
traumatic,
dismiss it.
dismissive. So people can go into appeasement and any of the survival responses. Um, and so then they're having this ongoing thing where they're not feeling listened to, they're not feeling heard, they're experiencing pain, they're not getting their questions answered. And it's traumatic. So then they start dreading going to the doctor. Um, the other layer I see for folks with chronic pain is they're just fucking tired of going to the goddamn doctor. Like, even
Yeah.
if they're getting great care, to be poked and prodded and clinical and be a patient, it's exhausting. And to try to imagine that this body is capable of pleasure when, like, the majority of what you're experiencing is doctor's appointments and clinical medical stuff, that can feel traumatic too. So, long answer to say that there's so many layers, and I see this a lot.
Yeah. It is a thing that really does have a lot of layers and shouldn't, right? Like, why is this so hard all the time? Like, it should be more collaborative. It doesn't feel like you're even let into your own medical care
Yeah,
often.
yeah,
Um, when you do work with folks, are there certain diagnoses that they are given that they can finally go that they can latch on to? I know a lot of us are that are in pain, which I'm a human in pain
yeah.
quite often. We spend so much time and energy, like you said,
Mhm,
trying to figure out what the fuck is going on and to finally get a name for it.
mhm.
How has that been working with individuals?
Yeah, like what kind of diagnoses I'm seeing?
Hmm.
So, I think first I'll say if someone's going to someone that's maybe not, pelvic pain informed, they might not get one. They might just get the,
Sure.
have you had a glass of wine? Try some wine, maybe some lube. Are you relaxed? Just try relaxing. And I think we all know when you tell someone to relax, that makes me
They're
want to
gonna relax
they're
quickly.
going to relax quickly and be fine. That's actually, I
Instant.
only need one session with every client I see because I just say, "Have you tried not being upset?" And then that's all they need. It's a wonder.
Healed.
Yeah, it's wild, I just churn them in and out. So, they often won't get a diagnosis, but when they finally do, probably, and again, I know we're talking about people with vulvas and vaginas, but there's pain that can happen for all kinds of folks, all kinds of genitals. And so
Yeah.
for people with penises, common ones can be also, a tight pelvic floor, people carrying a lot of tension in their pelvic floor, which can affect ejaculation, erection. It can also be indicative of like a cardiovascular thing going on, or
Hmm.
something called Peyronie's, which is like a fibrosis issue of the penis, of the tissue. So there's some there. Obviously, for folks who are trans non-binary, if they've had any sort of affirming surgeries, there can be, medical trauma as well as scar tissue
Sure.
and things going on there. If they haven't had, affirming surgeries, it could be the tension they're carrying in their pelvis because of not feeling aligned with their genitals and their gender. Um, for people with vulvas and vaginas, um, endometriosis is a big one that I see. This is when there's a very like uh, over simplifying definition, but basically when
Yes, we
tissue
love that.
when tissue in the pelvic area is growing outside of where it should be, but it can also happen all over the body. So it's like tissue growing where it's not supposed to, causing pain. Um, Another big one is, this is a mouthful, hormone mediated vestibulodynia. This
Wow. So
basically
good.
basically means, yeah, it's not sexy as it sounds. It basically means hormones are causing pain at the vestibule. The vestibule is the entrance of the vagina. Um, this is often caused by some kind of hormonal thing going on, which I see a lot for folks who have been on long-term hormonal birth control. Um,
Mm.
so
Hmm.
that's probably the biggest one that I see for people that I work with. There are other things that can go on with the tissue, with the nerves. Some people have like neuralgia going on, like a compression or issue in the sensitivity of the nerves. Um, some people have stuff going on with their microbiome that's affecting consistent infections. So it can really be a variety of things. So get yourself evaluated to figure out what's going on for you. And the thing with pain is, even if it starts as like a physical diagnosis, it's often maintained by psychological and sociocultural stuff. So, even once the physical is treated, ideally the treatment team consists of a physical therapist, a sex medicine specialist, and a therapist. So we can get the whole person and the whole human healing, which is not accessible
Yeah.
for everybody. And a lot of times insurances won't cover what's needed, or those specialists won't take insurance.
Isn't it great?
Yeah,
Such a fun fucking
it's so
cycle.
fun. But there
You
are,
fight to get
yeah,
insurance, then it doesn't work. You're like, cute.
I know.
Love it. Thank you so much for taking my money for nothing.
I know it's, and all the people that I, for me, end up seeing are oftentimes people out of pocket because they're the ones who like have the time to spend time with you and hear about what's going on, which is, this is a systemic issue. Luckily, there are groups like Tight Lipped and others that are fighting for advocacy and trying to change some of these things. But dang, it is frustrating.
Yeah. Um, I want to ask one question, then I kind of want to ask, let's
Yeah.
talk through some myths.
Yeah.
Is all pain bad?
No. Period. That's it. I think,
Complete sentence. Thank
yeah, that's
you.
it. We're all done. I'd love to hear your answer on this too. I would say, in short, no. What I mean by no is that not I think, but I know that pain can be a really important indicator and barometer, like a warning light, to tell
Yeah.
us um, when something isn't right. And so I think I read it a long time ago. But I think my therapist a long time ago told me to read The Gift of Fear, or something like that.
Okay.
I had mixed feelings about it, but I think it was all to say that like sometimes our bodies have a lot to tell us and we need to listen to them. Sure, sometimes the messages are coming from a maybe an old trauma place, but other times it's giving us an indication. So pain could be telling you that something's going too fast, that something's not right, that you need support. It could be something that you do intentionally because you like the way it feels. It could
Hmm.
be, I don't think that feelings and sensations are good or bad. I think that they are
Mm,
sensations that can give us information and to be curious about. So, certainly, if you're experiencing pain that is unwanted, I would get it checked out. And that doesn't mean that pain doesn't have a message or a purpose or something to tell us.
mm.
What do you think?
How did you get to I agree with you,
Yeah.
but before I forget this question, how did you get to not thinking, things are good or bad?
I
'Cause
mean,
I don't think that's like a thing we all think, where, like,
yeah.
it has to be one or the other.
I think in all transparency, I'm still working on that for myself because that's
Sure.
not what we're taught. I think with all the therapy work that I've done with myself and the trainings I've done to support my clients, um, it's just been an ongoing thing to get curious and to give us information. And so I don't know if I am there even within myself. I think it's
Sure.
something I'm still practicing. Um, but I think trying to detach ourselves from the story um, can be really helpful. But in order to shift our story, we have to change our state. And so I think it was
I like that.
Deb Dana, like a trauma specialist, who said story follows state, which means like whatever state we're in is going to affect the
Yeah,
meaning and the story of something that we're experiencing. And so for me, I think when I'm in a certain state that's able, like a rest and digest, a socially engaged state, I'm able to be like, oh, I'm having a sensation. That's interesting. I'm going to be curious about it. Versus if I'm in like fight or flight or stressed and I have a feeling, I'm probably going to be like, it's bad. It's all bad. It's all bad. We're all going to die, you know? So, and it could be the same sensation. So I would say for me,
me once a
yeah,
week. I'm
exactly.
like,
I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm working on it myself, but if I can, as I've been trying to shift my internal states, it's
yeah,
affected the way I can look at those things when I'm not in a survival fight or flight space.
yeah. I love that. I am a curious human, that's why I asked, but I agree with you. I don't think that all pain is bad. I think that we are fed that pain is all bad in somewhat of a controlling way.
Mm,
I don't have the energy to flush that out,
mhm.
but I feel like I'm a liar, here we go. I feel like, as those of us that, you know,
Yeah.
were, identify as women, have vaginas, have vulvas, like, we are set up to, like, think that being us is so hard and painful.
Mhm.
Like, there's no joy in all of these things,
Right.
which I think is kind of really shitty that we're set up to just be like, "You're getting your period, are you okay?" Like,
Yeah.
that's, like, the start of it. It just gets downhill from, "Oh, no, you're getting little breasts."
Yeah.
People's tones change, the way that we are
Mhm.
held, the way that we're talked to. It's like a fucked up weird start.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, and then
It's,
and then the way that people emphasize the no pain, no gain. So there is this also like thing in our
ooh,
culture that's
yeah,
like, oh, you can only find, strength and healing and growth if you go through pain, right? Or like just grin and bear it, just white knuckle it, like pain builds character. So I think our culture can also go to the other extreme where then we're dealing with immense amounts of pain and thinking it's normal. So
mhm,
I don't know, I've seen it swing both ways where it's like,
sure.
yeah, it's either like a really good thing that builds character or like something that is bad.
It also those conversations when I really pull back are very gendered.
Yeah, the no pain, no
Like,
gain is more for men, cis men, right?
mhm, mhm. And then I'm like, because we were taught, "Oh, it's gonna be so sad. You better get up." Like,
Mhm.
the energy.
Right.
Whole nother convo we can
Yeah,
go
but
go
but
into.
there is a gendered piece here, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, even as the myths. Let's get into some myths. I pulled some up on different websites. Myth, you can tell me your thought on them. You could tell me true. You can say false. However you want to respond.
Okay.
We're
Oh,
open
I just
here.
got anxious.
Okay.
What is it?
It's just different questions like people have
No,
sent
I know,
given
I
us. So
know.
like the
Just
first one.
just
You
like I'm
ready?
noticing that I got into like my test body, which is
I
like,
saw it. You
I
did.
need
I saw
extended
you.
time. I have ADHD. What is gonna happen?
See, this is real time, y'all. This is real life. Myth, men don't have pelvic floor muscles.
It's a myth that they don't. So they do have pelvic floor muscles. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
they
people
do.
with all genitals have a lot. Again, this is a little bit out of my scope, so I can't do it justice, but there are a lot of muscle groups that are part of our pelvic bowl, our pelvic floor, that all genders have. And that deserve
Pelvic
care
floor
just like
issues,
any other muscles.
and maybe a little bit more because I just told y'all I'm a happy person and I was laughing and tinkling at the same time. So I don't know.
Yeah, which is it says something's
It's
going
coming.
on.
Yeah, which is my next myth. Pelvic floor issues only affect older individuals.
False.
That's not true.
Not true. Well, I mean, we are
Untrue.
older
Don't
individuals.
do that. I am not older.
I
That's
feel like
okay.
an older individual. But it can affect people of all ages, and there's lots of traumas that can happen to that part of the body at any age.
Hmm. Pelvic floor is a normal part of aging.
Like our pelvic floor is a normal part of aging.
Pelvic
Oh,
pain.
pelvic pain.
Maybe I
Say again.
maybe I didn't fully read it. It's also fall. Okay. Pelvic pain is a normal part of aging.
um, yes, no, and so I would say people definitely can experience more pain as the tissues thin, as the tissues change, as we age. They can need more care. That does not mean that you have to tolerate it without support and intervention.
Sure. And last one, pelvic floor support only matters after giving birth.
Well, it sure as shit matters after giving birth, and most people don't say that. And
Shit does.
it matters in all aspects. It's another big, important muscle group and connective tissue connected to so many things in your body that deserves care and, knowledgeable intervention at all stages in life. And I
Mhm.
wish it was required to have pelvic floor, which again is physical therapy for the pelvic region, to have pelvic floor therapy before and after birth. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't get it. And then they have pelvic floor dysfunction and are like, what's going on? Why am I laughing and peeing?
Yeah.
Why am I, feeling a shift in my experience with pleasure during penetration? All these kinds of things. So, scar tissue, if you have a C section. So, please do yourself a favor and do it now, even if there's not an issue. See how things are going, how you can be preventative, proactive, and also if you're planning to have a some kind of a birth process, consider it before and after.
Yeah. I- That is such a thing that they don't really focus on. I feel like often those that have children, like it's focused on the children and not on the care of the person that the little human grew inside.
Yeah,
So having that information, I really do wish that more folks knew about it. I do think that because of our good girlfriend social media, which is where we're going here,
I want to break up with
there's
her.
a lot more. Oh, well, same. She and I have had a rough time. I just, I think I'm being suppressed again on the internet, but that's fine. That means I'm doing my job. Um, with social media, with our good girlfriend TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, because we're not calling it that letter, there's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions and thoughts. Do you think social media is helpful or harmful?
I think it can be both. I guess it's sort of the way I view anything is that depends on how you use it. Um,
Sure.
I do think it has given people access to a lot of things and information that they maybe wouldn't otherwise, to help them find community, to help them feel normal, to help them learn about things they may not otherwise. And then on the flip side, I think it's really hard for the consumer and the young people who aren't taught comprehensive sex education or mental health education to decipher maybe how it's impacting them, what's maybe feeling harmful, what's causing more body image issues, more isolation. I think a lot of us use it in a dissociative way that's not super intentional. And I think there's a lot of people out there who are calling themselves experts that maybe
That's there.
don't have the
Yeah.
knowledge, the experience to be calling themselves that and are just preaching their opinions, which, you can share your opinion, but for people who don't have a discerning lens or a broader knowledge, I think it can be dangerous and harmful. I definitely think it's been harmful for people in like comparison culture um, and being present with like what life actually is and looking at sort of like a false reality. So I think I've seen it have a lot of support and I've also seen it be detrimental. So it depends.
Why do you want to break up with her?
Because I'm feeling that push pull as well. I'm feeling I've been trying to like stop doing things that I don't feel excited about, and I definitely don't feel excited
Yeah.
about it. Certainly you can try to bring in people to help, but it gets costly. Um and I think yeah, it just doesn't feel quite real. It feels like I'm just having to, I don't know, it almost feels like an abusive relationship a little bit, where there's like this entity, this Mark Zuckerberg entity that like I need them to survive. I don't feel like I can leave them because I'm supposed to be doing this. And they can just like take, they can just like pull the rug out from under me at any time. If we were talking about like a relationship like that, that does not sound like a healthy, fulfilling relationship to
Mm.
me. So when I think about it
Mm.
relationally, it is not, it doesn't feel very good. But again, it feels stuck. Like, well, what else, are there other ways? But for me, I'm
Yeah.
really trying to spend some more time focusing on my own health and all the stuff we talked about in this episode. Um, I'm starting to wonder if it's important to me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a weird thing. Like everyone's like, you should do TikTok, you should do this. Let me tell everyone, and I like to remind folks, I fucking hate unsolicited advice. Leave me alone. I'm tired.
She does. She does.
Leave me
Don't
alone.
tell her to call it X.
I'm
I hate
not
it too.
calling it that
I
letter.
do that same thing. That's why we're
Fucking
both
letter.
pinky the fuck you attitude. It's like I will not. Thank you for your
No, thank
suggestion.
you. Also, our birthdays are very close. This it's we're
Gemini.
a lot of the same. We're a lot of the same. There are a lot of individuals, and I'm glad you hit that little nail on the head. Everyone's a fucking expert on the
Mhm.
internet. I don't even like being called an expert. They've done it so much. I have the ick, and I've been studying psychology since I was 16.
Yeah.
Ew, I hate the word. Like, um,
Yeah, it's a little bit like
have you
beware the Buddha on the road or whatever.
have you found though good information around like pelvic floor stuff that you do refer clients to or
Yes.
practices or anything like that?
Uh Tight-lipped. I think
You found them on the internet?
I think I found them through colleagues and and maybe a client. So again, they're advocacy education group. They also do support groups, get-togethers, meetups, podcasts.
Ooh,
Um, so I really like referring to them around some of the pelvic pain stuff. There's definitely some other physical therapists. I can't think of them right now, but I can give a list to
sure.
folks if they want. But there certainly are some really wonderful ones out there.
Yeah. How would you tell folks as someone that does sometimes get into the scroll things, like how are there any tips to decipher if the person actually knows what the fuck they're talking about?
Good question. Gosh, I don't know if I know how to answer that.
That's okay. That's an answer.
I think my answer is to get a few different uh, inputs of information. Um, and be curious about where this person just got their training. And again, I know people who have gotten great training, and I would not send people to them. So
Also that.
that's hard.
Yeah.
I think it's having some kind of check and balance. And I do, like you said, like people who aren't just like expert, but seem to be continuing to learn, continuing to offer updated versions of things, but get a couple different inputs so that it's not just like one input.
Yeah.
But
I
that's a
love
hard one.
that.
I don't know. What do you think?
I also I'm listen, I love to use my good girlfriend Google because she's free and I'm like, who is this?
Mm,
Let me go and look them up. Even people that work with me, I'm always like, look me up.
yeah.
You should know who you're working with. You should know whose advice you're taking.
Hmm.
Because there is a lot of people that have
Yeah.
advice and
Shop
not
around.
expertise
Yeah.
and not knowledge. Yeah. So I would say, sure, if you like what they're saying and it connects with you, I think that's also a start. Like
Hmm.
feeling that aha moment of like, oh shit, I've never heard it in a way that maybe it's digestible for me to understand.
Yeah.
But then I would also go and do whatever research I can. You already have a computer in your hand. Just do that extra step for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of a harder answer and a longer process, but I do work a lot with people with helping them what we call like find their yes and their no to help them sort of trust their body messages, right? Like what is my body
Hmm.
telling me? And to trust that feeling that we get around people that maybe give us the yes or give us the no, and to slow down enough to really feel into those and figure out those sensations. So that's sort of a longer
Hmm.
answer, is to maybe get some therapy support to help you build a better trusting relationship with your body's responses, so that if and when you're checking out a new person, to take the time to sit back and be like, how do I actually feel listening or looking at this person's stuff? Is it giving me yes vibes? Is it giving me no? Is it giving me I'm not sure, I need more information? Um, so I'd say that's another one, but that's a longer
Yeah.
lifelong process of kind of getting to know the communications of our body, which are sometimes in conflict with our brain. So that's a process, but one that I would invite people to be curious and inquire about.
Yeah. How is your mental health as you navigate all these things? Like we always talk about other individuals as providers. I'm always like, how's your brain? How's your heart? What's happening over there? Because we're not asked enough. Like
Yeah,
people are always putting things on us
yeah.
and like forgetting that we're also humans. It's so wild.
I
Um,
saw a funny little clip on TikTok or something the other day that was like two mental health providers like trying to catch up and ask each other about their lives, and it was just this ping pong of like, no, 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 how are you doing? Like, how are things feeling for you?
yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
how are you doing? Because we're like,
Yep.
it can be hard to flip the script. Um, Man, I'm a work in progress. I am doing a lot of my own therapy. I'm doing a lot of my own care stuff, and it is hard to be a human. I certainly don't use my therapy sessions with my clients as my personal therapy, but I do get real with clients
Don't do
about
that.
like being no, don't do that. But I am, more transparent than the old Freudian, blank slate
Sure.
approach of like, yeah, being a human is hard. Like, oh yeah, that's something I've struggled with, and here's some of the things that I've been doing to work through that. Like, um, when it is helpful for the client, I will self-disclose, not in too much detail, but I'll be a real human with them. So like I'm doing okay. Like I have a lot of the tools and resources. It is hard to make the time to do all the things. Some of the it feels like a full-time job. It is a full-time
Yeah.
job. So sometimes I would love the opportunity to just have my health and wellness be my full-time job and get paid to do it. Which it like half is, but not quite. Um, so work in progress, trying to find better balance and time management, which is hard for a ADHD person like me that wants to do all the things. As you know, it can be hard to, find the time to do all the stuff I want to do and make sure that I'm prioritizing taking care of myself. So I'm really working on it for myself and to model that for my clients. But it is a work in progress, and it is hard when we're up against so many systemic societal things that are not set up to prioritize a life that prioritizes um,
Mm.
that kind of well being.
Yeah. This was fun. I and people are always like, "You have such hard comments." I'm like, "They're so fun."
That's the kinky in
I think
us. We're
my
like, let's talk about
yeah,
the shadow. Give me trauma. Give me
it's
trauma.
it's so good. I also think because, we're very comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Mm,
Like even if it makes us squirmy because we're so inquisitive humans,
yeah.
this is why we get along. It's like, this is weird, but have you thought about
This is
this?
weird, but can you look at my vagina?
We're not. You got some we got gloves. Can I use your lube? Thanks. Like, and that is interesting. Something before we wrap up here, I'd love for you to speak to a little bit about like safety. um for a lot of folks, going to the doctors, it's also like a safety feeling. Navigating pelvic pain, it might be because of sexual harm or whatever, or just because whatever, but like there's a lot of safety that comes to my brain as we've had this conversation externally and internally, which is the way that I kind of look at it. Um, does that come up in sessions for you, or have you had to like navigate through any of that for yourself as well?
Absolutely. I would say a big part of the work is helping people find a sense of safety, safety in feeling pleasure, safety in the communities that they're in. And sort of a meta level of that too is a lot of people who have experienced a lot don't feel safe feeling safe. So,
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is if you've experienced a lot of stuff, your body has learned that it should be on guard, waiting for the next thing that isn't safe. And so, a lot of the work
Yeah.
that I do is, trying to help people or giving people resources to feel safe again in being safe, which is why I've been trying to do a lot more, um, trauma trainings to really help with that for myself and with clients. But yeah, safety is huge, and that's kind of the one of the first things that I have to do with clients is how do we build a sense of safety with each other in this relationship by having consistent care, so we
Yeah.
can do the work.
Yeah. I just wanted to touch on that because I know a lot of folks that have had, different types of trauma. They're like, I don't trust anyone. So
Yeah,
no, thank you.
yeah, yeah. Which for them
Yeah.
has probably kept them safe when it needed to, but it might not be working anymore.
What their body
Right,
needs. Sure. And I think there's, when you say like it's not working anymore, things change. Like you evolve. The
right,
things that maybe you needed before, you don't need as much, or you're able to navigate easier.
right. Exactly.
Whew. Okay. We've gotten to the last question, which is my favorite question because nosy.
Okay.
Um, what is the wildest thing that someone has texted or DM'd you in the last 2 weeks?
Oh, gosh, it's hard to think of the last 2 weeks, but I'll give you a good one that comes to my mind from the archives. And,
Okay. Give us a mess.
so luckily, it's been better since I'm, like, licensed and have learned, better boundaries, but, when I first, and again, nothing's really crazy to me anymore because 'cause I'm like, I see people
No.
peopling all the time, so I'm not, like, shocked and, whatever, but, back in the day, I used to get what I would call creepy callers, which was people who weren't really looking for therapy, who wanted to push the boundaries of how they talked about sex, which can be hard because sometimes people call a therapist and they're going to talk about some explicit stuff, and it's like part of why they're coming to see you. Um,
Yep.
but I had this one person who got creepy afterwards and got a little stalkery, which was scary. But to the funny part was it that basically they first called me and they said they were struggling because they realized that they liked the smell of public bathrooms after people would poop in them. And I was like, okay, that's a thing. Like, tell me what's
Sure.
like, are you doing it ethically? Are you doing it consensually? Because that doesn't have to be a problem. Like, find some people to,
Funk it up.
yeah, like let's figure that out for you. Um, and turned into them actually wanting to come to session with me so I could fart in the room with them so that they could see if they liked the way that I smelled. And part of me was like, well, I fart every day. Like, how much? So,
You're like, well,
well, let me,
bills
yeah,
and lights I like.
right. Um, can't do that as a therapist, but I was like, I think because of how non-shaming I am and how sex positive I am, it wasn't the reaction they wanted from me. I think they wanted me to be like upset and bothered and shocked, but instead I was like, "Well, look, I don't do that, but let me refer you to some of my colleagues who will happily fart in your mouth, fart in your face, fart in a jar. Like,
Hey, well,
what kind of
we
farts are
do
you
know
looking
some.
for?" So I'm give them a whole list of farters. So I think they didn't want that. They wanted me to be part of this shaming cycle of like,
They were
no.
so mad.
So shout out to the fart lovers out there. That's a good one that comes to my mind.
Thank you for that gift.
Yeah. And
For
just
the
PS, don't
individuals
send me
that,
unsolicited dick pics. Luckily, I don't get much of those
no one
anymore,
wants
but
that.
now and
I don't
then,
either.
yeah. I got one guy who sent me
You
one with
have
him
you?
next to a Pringle can. I just was like,
Oh, that photo too.
yeah.
Mm. Because everyone's not pulling out Pringle cans, so
Yeah.
maybe.
Oh man, we get some of those,
That's funny.
but
Have you ever gotten a vulva? Because I've gotten a vulva before.
no, I haven't.
Yeah. I sure did. I said, "Who cooch is this?
Yeah.
What is this?" Yeah, I've only gotten it once though.
Oh, man. Man, it makes me wanna bring up my
I was so
Instagram and look
stuck
at all
because
these
I was
ones
like,
I've gotten.
so they're all in the hidden files. You're gonna be like, I was just kidding. I actually got 50 over here.
I know, I'm like, "There's so
Um,
many, oh, shoot." Okay, well, next time, but now I'm just now they're just funny at some point.
Still don't send them. No, thank you. I was gonna say something. We're gonna stop because I was gonna say something wild, and that's not for your ears. It's just for hers. Before you go, where can he, they, them, she, they, z, them, z, they, anybody? Where can they find you? Where can they find out what you're doing? Keep up with you. Listen to things. Give us your info.
Thank you. Y'all can find me at my website. I'll give it to you to put in the show notes, nicolettavheidegger.com. Please do join my newsletter. I don't send a lot of stuff and spam, mostly just events I'm doing, but I would say that would be the best way in case me and social media do have a pause at some point. But for now, I'm also on social media at Sluts and Scholars, which is the name of my podcast. You can also find that at slutsandscholars.com or anywhere you get your podcasts, or at Therapy with Nicoletta. You can find all my links in my bios there. Thank you for having me.
Ooh. Yes, this was so fun. In anything, take what feels good for you. Go do some research. If we talked about something that you are inquisitive about, go use your good girlfriend Google. She's free. But we're not, neither is our time. So we will talk to you later, and until next time.
Thank you.